Opening shot, a grieving mother speaks out. First, some backstory. Federal officials say Operation Midway Blitz is dedicated to the memory of Katie Abraham, a Chicago native who was killed by an undocumented immigrant during a drunk driving crash while she was at college in Urbana back in January. Now, at the time, the Department of Homeland Security put out this video featuring Abraham's grieving father along with Abraham's stepmother, talking about their frustration that their daughter's tragic killing happened at the hands of someone who is not legally in this country.
Here's a guy that wasn't productive, wasn't a good citizen, and he barreled into a vehicle with 5 women into it, and his first instinct was to get out of the car and run. And then within a day and a half was almost at the Mexico border. So to me, these are not the productive folks we want to bring into the country. You want to build a country on migrants, probably not the guy you want to stand behind to build a country.
But now, many months later, an Operation Midway Blitz roiling the region, Abraham's actual mother, Denise Lawrence, says she's had enough. This week, she penned an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune entitled, "My daughter is the face of Operation Midway Blitz. I am reclaiming her legacy." In it, she writes that her daughter would not have wanted this. Quote, "Being a grieving mother is difficult enough without being in the spotlight, but with each passing day, concerns about Operation Midway Blitz continue to mount. Katie would not want to be associated with this, taking place in a city she celebrated and felt safe in. It just isn't consistent with who she was. Association with the operation's actions is not a positive reflection of who she was. I taught Katie to advocate for herself. And as heartbreaking as it is, Katie is no longer here to advocate because of a crime that took place 150 miles from Chicago. She cannot advocate for herself and stand up to say, I am not a political pawn, so I am here for her. Katie Abraham is my daughter, and I am reclaiming her legacy." Now, the Trump administration has aggressively used tragedies like Abraham's to further the public relations campaign on aggressive deportation and border actions. Republicans even named legislation after Laken Riley, a young Georgia woman who was murdered by an immigrant in 2024. Since I'm in the business of communication, I can tell you with some authority that the messaging tactic here is clear. It's designed to appeal to your emotions and feelings. Never mind that the Libertarian Cato Institute has put out multiple studies concluding that violent crime tends to be lower among undocumented immigrants than U.S. citizens. If the administration can make Americans feel on a visceral level like they're in danger until every last illegal is deported, then perhaps they'll support more severe tactics like sending in the National Guard. It's all about optics, and it's all about messaging. But Abraham's mother makes it clear the federal government does not get to determine the legacy of an American citizen. She said, Abraham's not anybody's political pawn, especially when her memory is co-opted in an attempt to justify actions that her daughter vehemently opposed.
Tonight, a massive immigration raid in Little Village and Cicero nabs suspected U.S. citizens, including aldermanic staffers. Plus, a federal judge extends a temporary restraining order against Trump deploying the National Guard in Illinois. Former Chicago mayor and federal prosecutor Lori Lightfoot weighs in. Another alder files a claim against the federal government after she was handcuffed by immigration agents at a Humboldt Park hospital. And federal shutdown day 22. Illinois Congressman Brad Schneider on the prospects for a deal.
Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Paris Schutz. A federal judge extends the temporary restraining order against National Guard troop deployment here in Illinois, at least until the Supreme Court resolves this issue for good. And it all comes as agents conducted high-profile raids in Cicero and Little Village today. 22nd Ward Alderman Michael Rodriguez says 4 people detained he believes are U.S. citizens, 2 of them his own staff members. And here to weigh in on all the latest developments is a former Chicago mayor and federal prosecutor, Lori Lightfoot. Mayor Lightfoot, thanks so much for being here and talking to us.
My pleasure.
First, I want to get your reaction to the extension of the TRO. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to take this case and make a ruling on it?
Well, I think it's very likely that the Supreme Court will weigh in. Obviously, the Trump administration is petitioning them to lift the stays that have been put in place by the district court judge and partially by the Seventh Circuit. So I think they will weigh in. You know, unfortunately, defenders of the Constitution and democracy have been on the short end of things in our Supreme Court. So I'm concerned about what the Supreme Court will do. But as the district court judge found, and they've got to live with that factual basis, that there is a fiction being perpetrated by the federal government, that there is a justification, an emergency, a crime situation here in Chicago that warrants bringing in the military to our streets. As we can see, every single day Chicagoans are living their lives. It continues to be the same great city that's been designated one of the best cities in the world 9 years in a row, I think it is.
magazine really, the readers of that magazine really like this city.
Yes,
apparently.
there's no justification, there's no factual basis for the hellscape that the federal government has claimed.
Same thing, though, same situation in Portland, and then is it the Ninth Circuit?
The Ninth Circuit,
Ninth
yes.
Circuit basically overturned it and ruled that even though the Posse Comitatus Act seems fairly clear, they ruled that that Trump might be on legal standing.
Well, I think there is a difference between what's happened in Portland and what's happening on the ground there. The Ninth Circuit said, well, we think that there's justification for this because people are going after immigration and federal troops that are guarding federal property in Portland, that are acting in a violent way. I think that's still a thin reed.
Well, deploying the Illinois State Police here might have been a way to counteract that.
But there's no justification for it. The escalation in tensions is because of the actions of the ICE and federal immigration agents, particularly in Broadview and other places. They have killed someone. They have caused grievous bodily harm. They were indiscriminately dispensing chemical agents across the region and only stopped doing some of that because they were brought into court and the federal courts have acted. But they are committing crimes across our region and seemingly with no accountability whatsoever.
And as that is happening, as I understand, you are starting a new initiative here to try and counteract it. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're calling it the ICE Accountability Project, and it really has three components to it. One is we want to create a centralized archive of all the purported evidence of criminal actions on the part of ICE and CBP agents across the region. It's out there, but it's in different places, and it makes it difficult to aggregate the information. We want to create a portal where what's happening real time can be centralized and then put out for the public to view. Number two, and importantly, we want to unmask the ICE agents, the CBP agents who are committing crimes in our city. So the normal immigration activity, not that, but we see a homicide, we see attempted homicide, we see excessive force being routinely used.
Now, I should quote, you're saying homicide. Now, they've said that was self-defense, that was...
Well, I think, for example, the gentleman
This
who
is
was killed...
Silverio Villegas-Gonzalez,
Yes,
Franklin
who was
Park.
killed in the traffic stop. ICE put out one narrative, but all the other documentary evidence, the videotape evidence, tells a very different story. It's not for us to make a determination as to whether a crime has in fact been committed, but we want to gather the evidence so that, frankly, local law enforcement, like of Franklin Park, that is small, has a very small police force, depends upon the county and the state to help support them in these kind of serious allegations of crime, that everything is together in one repository, and we start the process of unmasking the agents. Even though they're wearing masks, every single one of them has a towel.
You say unmasking, they're going to say you're going to dox them, and that's why threats against them are up.
They are on public property, out in the open. We have an absolute right under our Constitution to be able to document what's happening. Every single one of those agents, height, weight, hair color, they wear their vests in a particular way. They're wearing insignias. Even the masks that they wear, the shoes that they wear, the cars that they're driving. We have a right to compile that information and put together a profile of each of these agents that's alleged to have committed crime. This is not about doxing them. This is not about putting them in danger, and I'm sure we're going to hear that. But as residents of this city in the metropolitan area, we have a right to know who's doing what, and supposedly in our name, but we believe that they are committing crimes, and it needs to be investigated, and then let a grand jury, let the prosecutor make a determination.
Are you saying you're going to compile this information then and then take legal action, civil action?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to compile the information, and hopefully it's going to compel local law enforcement, the state's attorney, and others to do their jobs and investigate the allegations of serious crimes being committed. If this was happening with any other law enforcement body, the state police, the county, the local police, the state's attorney would open up an investigation immediately and make a determination as to whether or not there was sufficient evidence to bring charges. Why is that not happening with these federal agents?
Yeah,
it needs to be.
As we know, the state's attorney in Cook County is not investigating that shooting or that killing, so far as we know, unless there's an investigation we don't know about. But you're not going to be able to get their names, however, because DHS has been very circumspect about who these people are. So what will people get to know about them? You're just going to have their physical traits?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of information that actually can be gathered and focused on to put together a profile of who these actors are. Now, the chances they will move these folks and bring in new people and make it more challenging. But the fact of the matter, if it has a deterrent effect, if the people who are committing these bad acts against our residents are shipped someplace else, all the better. I'm about making sure that our communities are safe, that there isn't lawlessness being perpetrated by law enforcement, and that there's accountability when that happens.
You know that the federal government, DHS, they're going to come after you. They're going to say that you're trying to dox their people. You're going to be a target now if you go forward with this. Are you ready for that?
Look, I don't shrink in fear of any person. I have the Constitution and the law, rule of law on my side. But what I can't do is sit here and sit on the sidelines and watch these crimes being committed on a regular basis and do nothing. We have a right to stand up, to find our voice, and say, not in my name. And that's what the ICE Accountability Project is going to be about. We'll make a further announcement in a few days, but it's important as residents that we take steps to make sure that we're reclaiming our rights.
Speaking of legal action, I want to replay a little interview that I did earlier today with Alder Jesse Fuentes, who is also filing civil action against DHS for having been handcuffed at a Humboldt Park hospital. Let's take a look at some of that.
Federal Tort Claims Act is the only way that we can sue the federal government. Otherwise, the federal government is exempt from suits. This is a tool that allows individuals who had their civil rights violated to be able to sue the government. Now, I cannot sue the individuals that handcuffed me with real handcuffs in the hospital that day because they did not identify themselves. As you see in the video, they're not wearing uniform, they're not wearing badges. They never told us their names. And so we are suing their employers, Homeland Security. Now, we could walk away without a dollar from this suit, but we need to hold federal agents who continue to reign terror in our communities accountable. We cannot continue to have agents that are coming to our community, ripping families apart, violating constitutional rights, and physically assaulting people without accountability. This claim is one way that we get to do that.
Federal Torts Act, is this a potentially successful avenue to hold to account?
I commend the Alderwoman for taking action. Number one, those agents didn't have any jurisdiction in that hospital. She was simply there to inquire about one of her residents who was injured in an encounter with the federal agents. The fact that those agents couldn't back away when she was interrogating them and asking them what happened, there was no justification for them to put her in cuffs and arrest her. That is a false arrest. And I commend her in trying to hold them accountable. You know, the chips will fall where they may in the court proceeding, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. And those agents, one of them was wearing masks, one of them wasn't. We can figure out who those folks are. They're on videotape. We can tell what their height is. We can tell what their hair color is, what their eyes are. Do they have scars? Do they have tattoos? Are they wearing jewelry?
So this is the kind of stuff you want to put in this,
Yes.
this repository
Yes.
here. You're going to say agent so-and-so,
Yes.
green eyes, 6'4", whatever.
Yes, 100%.
And that's a way to identify them. What about the ruling on wearing body cams? Do you trust that they'll follow this court ruling now and they'll make things safer?
I don't think that they're going to have body cams for all the agents that are out there on the street. I do not. So I think you'll see further litigation related to that. But I commend the judge who frankly used to be a former law department lawyer. She understands exactly what needs to happen. There's ways in which they should be conducting themselves in dealing with members of the public. And if they were wearing body cams, if they had, excuse me, audio tape of their encounters with residents, some of this stuff wouldn't be happening.
ICE Accountability Project, there'll be a website for this.
There'll be a website. We'll make a full announcement in the coming days.
Okay.
But I wanted to let folks know this is coming. We're going to take action and make sure that we start to hold the ICE agents who are committing crimes across Chicagoland accountable.
All right. Well, we appreciate you announcing that with us and our viewers. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, thank you so much for being here. And after this, federal shutdown is in day 22. Is there an end in sight? When we come back.